Well, it's October, and you know what that means. Time for Halloween and scary movies. But then, soon after that, it will be Christmas. And what better way to celebrate both than A Nightmare Before Christmas, the great classic film by Tim Burton. Right? Hello, welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm talking about who really made Tim Burton's A Nightmare Before Christmas. The answer seems obvious, and almost everybody will immediately jump and say, well, Tim Burton, it's in the name, obviously he did it, right? Well, yes and no. It's his story. He wrote the book. He wrote parts of the script. But if you actually look at it, he didn't even really write the script entirely. He wrote the story, and then it was adapted from this book he made into a full-length movie. What he wanted to do was take this story and turn it into kind of a farce of the Christmas specials we used to get. The little stop-motion claymation stuff like Rudolph and stuff like that. That's why it was stop-motion, was he wanted to do a sort of parody of that style with something much darker and more sinister, hence the whole style that it ended up having. So he had this story, but if you read the original story, you read the book, it's a lot different than what we ended up getting in the movie. It's very limited, the story's much smaller, there's very few characters, it's essentially just Jack, his dog, and Santa, if I'm not mistaken. Those are the only characters. So how did we get from that to the full story we got? Well, to start, the studio decided that they want to make a full feature-length film out of the movie, not just a Christmas special that would air once on TV and then be forgotten about. So they had to add a lot to it. So if you go on IMDb and look at the writers for this, you see that Tim Burton is credited as writing the story and the characters, but there was two other writers that had to write the screenplay and adapt the story into that screenplay. There was a lot more going on here than just Tim Burton going, I've got an idea, here it is, go make it. And also, by the way, in case you didn't know, it wasn't directed by Tim Burton either. This movie was actually directed by a man named Henry Selick. You may not recognize that name, you may not recognize that face, you may have no idea who that is, and that's because this movie was extremely successful, and so when Henry Selick went to make another movie, he did the obvious thing that was good for him, was to say, this movie was directed by the same director that brought you The Nightmare Before Christmas. So when he went on to direct James and the Giant Peach, and went on to direct Coraline, it told you from the director that brought you The Nightmare Before Christmas, because it implied Tim Burton to you, but was actually Henry Selick. So it was a smart thing to do for advertising, but was misleading to the audience that was under the impression Tim Burton had made it. Now, this James and the Giant Peach DVD cover is especially misleading because it says from the creators of Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, which it can say because, as I said, Henry Selick directed that. But it also says from the acclaimed director of Alice in Wonderland, which Henry Selick had nothing to do with. That was directed by Tim Burton. But this movie was produced by Tim Burton, so they can say that it came from him. Unlike Coraline, which was not produced by Tim Burton, so they can't say it the same way. If he didn't say that it was the same guy that made The Nightmare Before Christmas, everybody would be thinking that he copied the style of The Nightmare Before Christmas, even though that style was his own. So he had to say it was that guy who did it, not naming names. It was just that guy that you like, and so people go, oh, I like that movie, I'll go see it. But it wasn't Tim Burton's style. It was Henry Selick's style. That's why he continued on in that style, making movies like that. And Tim Burton didn't. Many people, when they think of Tim Burton, immediately think of that stop-motion creepy style that he uses in all of his movies, right? Because he did The Nightmare Before Christmas, he did The Corpse Bride, and he did Frankenweenie. Even when you cut out James and the Giant Peach and Coraline, which he didn't actually do, you still think, oh, he did all of those movies, right? Well, that's actually the full catalog of stop-motion movies that he made, was just those. And he did Corpse Bride and Frankenweenie dramatically after The Nightmare Before Christmas, unlike James and the Giant Peach and Coraline, which came out fairly soon after. So was Henry Selick copying Tim Burton, or was Tim Burton copying Henry Selick? Because Henry Selick did it first, and did it more consistently, and Tim Burton only started doing it when he was no longer popular and was trying to attain something that he never really had, but people thought that he had done. Interesting. To recap, Tim Burton didn't write the screenplay for this movie. He didn't direct this movie. He wrote the story that got turned into a slightly different story and made much bigger and more complex and more interesting, and then had his name slapped on it. Did he make this movie? When we talk about movies that have been adapted from other people's works, do we really credit that writer with the movie? When we watch Harry Potter, any of them. Are we thinking this is J.K. Rowling's movie? I don't. I think, oh, this is a Chris Columbus film, or I think this is an Alfonso Cuarón film, or whoever did it. I'm thinking that's the director because it feels like their style. Even though it's based on her work, she wrote the books, they changed it. They adapted it into their own version of the story. That's why each of the Harry Potter films feels drastically different depending on who directed it. And that's why The Nightmare Before Christmas feels so different than Tim Burton movies actually do. If you really think about it, there is a difference in style. The Nightmare Before Christmas is much more like Coraline and James and the Giant Peach than any of Tim Burton's films. Compare it directly to The Corpse Bride. There's a different feel to it. It's subtle, but it's there. The reality of it is Tim Burton isn't the one that made this movie. He had the idea, he had some of the imagery in place, but Henry Selick was the one that made it his own and made it into what it was, and then continued on successfully in that for the later part of his career. Tim Burton didn't do that. That wasn't Tim Burton's thing. He didn't make stop motion movies like that until later when, like I said, his career had fallen off a bit. So should we really be crediting Tim Burton for this movie? When we talk about it like it's the crown jewel on his career. Like, Tim Burton's career hasn't been great lately, but man, it started out great because he had the Batmans, he had Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, and who can forget the best of them all, The Nightmare Before Christmas. Oh wait, he didn't do that movie. I know I'm repeating myself a little bit from my Tim Burton rant I did years ago, but I had to talk about Henry Selick a bit because this guy just doesn't get the credit he deserves. And I couldn't go another Halloween without talking about this guy because his movies are so much fun to watch around this time of year. He has such a unique and creepy and cool style that is such a cool style, in fact, that Tim Burton chose to copy it and tried to make that part of his persona because people thought it was him and liked it, so he went, sure, I can make movies like that too. I'll make The Corpse Bride. And The Corpse Bride, yeah, it's pretty good. And Frankenweenie, well, The Corpse Bride is pretty good. Henry Selick is a master at this little weird niche style that he came up with, and Tim Burton's been riding the coattails of it. Henry Selick should be praised. That's why I'm saying his name so much in this video, because so many of you have never heard that name before, so Henry Selick, Henry Selick, Henry Selick. This guy's awesome. The Nightmare Before Christmas is a classic. It just objectively is. Give that credit to Henry Selick because he deserves it. And take this information with you. Go quiz your friends. Hey, who directed The Nightmare Before Christmas? Even throw in who directed Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. I'll give you $1 if you get it right. And see how many of them don't get it right because so many people don't know. It's a shame. It is a shame. So celebrate this October, celebrate this Halloween by spreading the news, spreading the truth. Be a truther for Henry Selick. I'm tired of telling people that he made the dang movie. So you tell them. Help me out, guys. I'm Simon from Simon's Rants, and that was my rant for today.